That's all I got. Welcome, good evening, and welcome to the 2024 West River Modified Union Education District Annual Informational Meeting. I'm glad you all could attend. My name is David Lebo. It's my privilege to serve as your Education District Moderator and will be the moderator for this meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few instructions on how to participate. Those in the crowd, just please raise your hand. However, there are people that are online. So when you join us by Zoom, please mute your microphone and label yourself correctly so that we know who we're calling on. Good. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature if you're on the Zoom, and I'll call on participants as the hands are raised. The chat is turned off and will not be monitored, so don't use any of the chat. When called on, please unmute yourself, identify yourself and your town so we know where you're coming from, and then we will go from there. After you're done speaking, please mute yourself again if you're on the Zoom. I'd like to remind you that this is an informational meeting to answer questions related to the warrant articles. We are not voting on any articles tonight. There can be no motions or amendments. You cannot change the articles. This is purely informational. Please ask clarifying questions on the warrant articles. The elections on these articles, as written, is tomorrow, Wednesday, March 27th, at your respective polling places, beginning at 9 a.m. in Townsend, Brookline, Newfane, and Jamaica, and 10 a.m. in Windham, with all polling places closing at 7. To keep things moving, I will allow a speaker to speak once per article, and then hopefully not more than twice. When we discuss elections, I'll allow a candidate to make a brief introduction if they'd like, but campaign speeches will be deemed out of order. At this time, I would like to have the West River Modified Union Education Board and the administration introduce themselves. Let's start at that end.
All right, Lori Garland, Director of Finance.
Bob Tebow, Superintendent.
Al Clausen, Board Chair.
Joe Winrick, Vice Chair.
Sarah Webb, at-large board member.
Leanne Jolson from Brookline, board member.
Dana West, Jamaica, board member.
Kate Gehring, at-large board member.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we have some online.
Oh, we have some online? Who would like to introduce themselves that is online? Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Bertram. I'm a Newfane rep. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight.
That's quite all right. Thank you.
Dana.
Dana.
Dana Quadro, Principal Leland Gray. Sorry about my voice.
That's quite all right. Oh, another member just walked in.
Paul Stapleton from Windham for Leland Gray.
Excellent. I think that's everybody. I'd like to thank the school board, the administration, teachers, and employees for all the hard work they do for our children. I now call the West River Modified Education District 2024 Annual Informational Meeting to order. I will read the warning. To the legal voters of the West River Modified Union Education District, comprising the voters of the towns Brookline, Jamaica, Newfane, Townsend, and Windham, are hereby warned and notified that the articles of business 1 through 11 for 2024 annual meeting will be voted on by Australian ballot on Wednesday, March 27, 2024, at their respective polling places, beginning at 9 a.m. in Brookline, 9 a.m. in Jamaica, 9 a.m. in Newfane, 9 a.m. in Townsend, and 10 a.m. in Windham. Polls will close in all such towns at 7 p.m. on the following articles of business. I will stop there, and if there's no objection, I will not read the entire warning. Okay, moving on. We will now discuss each article one by one. Article 1, to elect a moderator. I'm here. I'm kind of, yes, I'm here.
I'll nominate.
No, we don't have to nominate. Yes, although the moderator's job is in question in the future because of the whole voting process is an Australian ballot now. So needing a moderator, Al does a fine job, and in the future, the chairman may run the meeting. Okay?
Use a neutral party.
Neutral party? It's good to have a neutral party for the
Yes.
informational meeting? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Article 2, to elect a clerk. Sarah Wiswall is a current clerk, although I hear she is retiring this year and is not interested in running again next year.
This is actually online. We could ask her, confirm that.
Confirm that, Sarah?
Yes, that is confirmed. I am not running again. Thank you.
Okay, just so everybody knows, Sarah is not running again. The 3 positions there, I don't think anybody petitioned for, right, so they're all write-in positions. Article 3 is to elect a treasurer. Lori Garland is our current treasurer, and I believe she is running.
I'm available to be written in.
She's available to be written in as a write-in candidate. There you go. Okay. That's Article 3. Any other discussion on those? Hearing none. Article 4. Shall the voters of the district authorize the Board of School Directors to borrow money in by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year? Any discussion? Oh, you keep an eye there. Thank you. Article 5. Shall the voters of the district approve compensation to the current officers for their services during fiscal year 2025 in the following amounts? Moderator $250, clerk $2,000, and treasurer $2,000. I don't believe those have changed from last year. Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion. Article 6. Shall the voters of the district approve compensation to the school directors for their service during the fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $1,000 for the directors and $1,200 for the chair of the school board? Again, I don't believe that's changed from last year. Hearing no discussion. Article 7. Shall the voters of the district set the date of the 2025 annual meeting as the 4th Tuesday of March? No discussion? There will be no snow next year, right? This time of year.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir?
Do you have a time or just the date?
Time or date?
You've got the date, but you don't have a time.
Yeah, I think we have always done 7 PM, it's the same time as the board meetings. We usually meet.
Just curious.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? No? Okay. Article 8. Shall the voters of the West River Modified Union Education District of the district approve the school board to expend $14,595,562 for grades pre-K through 12, which the amount of the school board is determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? Discussion. I believe the treasurer has a presentation. Do you want me to move out of the way?
I do. It's a little awkward here.
Yes, sir. Let me get out of the
I
way.
do have a presentation.
Oh.
So let's see if I can change this
Maybe I
a little
was in a
bit.
bad spot.
Oh, yeah.
Can everybody, okay,
Wants
can see
Wants
me.
to slide.
Yeah, you guys
come
need
this
to
way.
move. Go right
Do-si-do,
around.
and
Keep
away
going.
we go.
Sorry.
Okay.
Get out of here.
All right, we'll make it work. All right. All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to actually see a crowd out tonight. I'll constitute this as a crowd for us, so this is great. We're gonna just talk through the budget, how we got to the budget number, and then talk through the tax rate a little bit here. So, this would be, Al is gonna jump in here.
Oh, all right. Apologies, I was in the shuffle there. Yeah, so I just wanted to start with, I can't see what's on there, but when we formed the West River Education District, we came up with our mission and our core values, and we spent a lot of time thinking about it, looking into the community, and coming up with this eventual mission that we had here. And I'll just read it aloud so everybody can hear it. In WRMUED, all students will have an outstanding educational experience in a safe and welcoming environment so they may achieve and surpass their learning goals. The WRMUED is responsible to the needs of its community and provides the necessary systems, staffing, and resources needed to ensure that all of our students will become informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens. So that is kind of our overall mission. And then it gets really fleshed out. I'm not going to read all of these, but these are a listing of core values, and then how it's broken out in terms of various portions of their education: early education, pre-K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and post-grad. So all very important to us, and this is what we use as kind of our North Star when we're actually building budgets or in thinking about the school in any way. And then, of course, the administration takes all of our mission and our values and translates that into our educational system. So that is what we task them with, and they do a fantastic job each and every year.
Great. Thanks, Al.
Okay.
So as we start to look at the budget, we also always look at projections of students, where we are now and where we're going to be in the future. And so this slide here shows we had the New England School Development Council do this data collection for us this year. And we've had our own projections, and they were actually fairly close. So which was good to see, but really understanding where we're headed, and this is part of why there's a long-term planning committee, right? So because as we look at this, we can see 2023-24, 416 just K through 12. This does not include pre-K, and you can see in 10 years' time we've lost 10% of the student population. And I think in your annual report, you can look back and see there was a historical graph as well. So the budget development, how do we, Al alluded to this, but we use our guiding principles because that's what we have to base this budget on, and we make student-centered decisions. Ensure there are sufficient resources for Tier 1 support strategies. Ensure there are some resources for the most impactful Tier 2 strategies, and ESL and ELL children. So this is, basically what our process is. We develop and implement a program. We review and sunset programs that are no longer feasible. Invest in a safe and functional physical plants, buildings. Ensure equality of opportunities for students, and take a long-term perspective, which is what you've been hearing a lot of, right? You've been hearing a lot of that long-term perspective. And the most important thing is we're transparent. So, this can be found on the WRED website. All of our budget documents can be found there, and all of the board documents can be found also in the board website on WCSU.
I have a question.
Retro, yes.
Can you briefly tell me what Tier 1 and Tier 2 and ESL and ELL stand for?
So tier 1 refers to sort of the core instruction that every student gets access to. And then Tier 2 would be the level of support and extra work that certain students are going to need if they fall behind in the Tier 1. And there's also a Tier 3, which is really specialized for students that really need that, typically known as special education. ESL is English as a second language, and English language learners. The names have changed throughout time, so we've used them both here just so everyone understands the change, but there was a different name used earlier as well. So, but yeah, this is the English language learners, is the new ELL language they use. Yep, absolutely.
All right, so here we are with the budget document. And so this is a summary, and I just want to point out that what does the board control and what does the state control? So the state controls a lot of these levers that result in a tax rate. The board has, very little control and only controls the expenses. And even that, we just had a discussion. There are pressures on that as well for some uncontrollable costs. So this year's budget is up 7.77% year over year, $1 million there. Our offsetting revenues, which are revenues that are not from the ed fund, right? So their grants, their tuition, all of those different miscellaneous revenues. The reason it's down is because the small schools grant is no longer available because it's picked up in our long-term weighted ADM numbers there. But that's why you see a fairly large decrease in offsetting revenues, which also increases. When your revenues go down, your tax rate goes up. So this is what our education spending is looking like, which is 9.54% increase, which is significant. However, because of the new weighting for the students, you'll see that the unified tax rate year over year is actually down 3.5 cents, or 2% there. So that's where the power of the long-term weighted ADM comes in. And so that changed with Act 127. There are new weights. So a student sitting in a seat is weighted differently. Each student is weighted differently, or could be weighted differently. So you can see that was a fairly large increase there year over year. So the other piece that the state controls is the yield, right? So everybody, the yield is the mechanism that the state uses to basically make sure that everybody's paying the tax rate. And this yield here I'm using is actually just a little bit low than the last recommendation that we received. So, which means your tax rates that are projected on this particular document are maybe a little lower because the yield is headed up a little bit.
Their actuals may be a little lower than this projection.
Exactly. So you can see when you take those cost per pupils based on the long-term weighted ADM, it's actually less than last year. Okay.
And can I just jump in a little bit on that part, because this can be confusing for people when you've seen our enrollment going down,
Right.
and you see our student count based on our weighted ADM up 13%. It's confusing. People don't understand. There's fewer kids. Why do we have a higher long-term weighted ADM? That refers to the weighting that Lori talked about. That, you know, in the old model, students were weighted a certain way. Secondary students were weighted more as primary students, and so on and so forth. But with a lot of charges around that process being inequitable, the state legislature did a whole new study called the UVM weighting study. There was recommendations made to the legislature coming out of that, which put more of an emphasis on students in poverty and students in areas that are more rural, like a scarcity factor, if you will. So our students tend to get, if we have a higher poverty rate than average, we get a little bit extra kids in that count. And because we're in a very scarcely populated area, we get a scarcity factor added to those kids as well. So a kid in a high school room might look like one kid in our enrollment, but they might count as like a 1.5
Right.
in our long-term weighted ADM. So that's just so you understand those numbers. So we are actually up 13% in our student count, while our enrollment is actually down a little bit because of that change.
Does anybody have any questions on that? It's a little hard to kind of wrap your head around, but yeah, and that's where also the small schools come in. So students in small schools are weighted differently as well. So you're getting some of that money back that you lost in that revenue. All right. So I'll take this one, Al. I think we talked about it, but so what were the major increases to the budget, right? So salary, of course, is we have negotiated agreements, so we're locked into those there. Health and dental, healthcare. I'm sure you've read it in the paper multiple times, but healthcare is up 16.4%. So that played a pretty big role. Investments in MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, which also goes to what Bob was talking about, the tiers. So that is our academic support teachers, ASTs, trying to remember all my acronyms for you, and then our special ed teachers as well. The assessments were up. We've added some positions, and so there's been a lot of talk about the ESSER funds going away, right? We had ESSER, 3 rounds of ESSER, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ARP ESSER. And we actually didn't add a lot of positions with that money. So really we're not bringing in to the local budget, as that money goes away, very, very many positions. So 1.5 positions is all we're bringing in. And that was an intro to high school position that now will be locally funded, and also a campus security officer that was previously funded by a grant.
And just to translate again, the acronyms, ESSER was the COVID relief funds that came from the federal government. So they flooded us with some money to help support kids through COVID, and then they ended it. So trying to adjust the things that we funded with it, some of it went away, and some of it we tried to roll into our local budget depending on where the needs were.
Right, thanks, Bob. And then we also added after school and a summer program. So this one here was funded by a grant, a 21st Century grant. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we actually did not qualify for that or did not receive that grant again. So the board had to make a decision on whether to continue after-school programming at a cost to the local budget or not have after-school programming. So we were able to get, last minute, I actually was able to pull some money out of the budget because we were able to get a summer camp grant. So that was great. So we have that coming in, but the board decided to put that in to secure the after-school programming in the elementary schools and the middle school. So, and then we have just general inflationary factors. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you're paying more for whatever you're buying, and those are also coming into this budget.
Question?
Yes.
Back on the after-school and summer program, you had mentioned you had a grant. I think you either had a grant or expecting a grant, and now there won't be a grant. But why would so that would have decreased your grant revenue, right? But but the expenses have jumped. Is that 300%?
Right.
So is that a separate issue?
That was added into the local budget, so it's no longer grant funded.
Oh, so, okay, so.
It didn't exist as an expense previously.
Wasn't in here at all.
Right.
So you probably have like a grant fund to get
Yes.
to his question. So you had another set of books that has
Thank you.
grant-funded programs that's not in the general operating.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to talk through the principles, put together some information about, you know, what is your investment, right? So you are investing this in our schools, and so what's going on in the schools themselves? So Newbrook Elementary, and you gotta love the pictures, right? That's like speaks to what's going on here. Want to go to the next slide? We have some. But so I want to talk about the academic achievement, the high quality staffing, safe and healthy schools, and personalized learning. So this is where the investments are drilling down, right? So we have, I love that Scotty used this sturdy curricula. I love that. Bridges in mathematics, and this year, or for the next school year, be rolling out EL education to all of the districts. So really investing in that.
That's a literacy curriculum.
Right. And then, of course, we talked about the multi-tiered systems of support and the local common assessment plan. Professional development plan, right? We have a pretty robust professional development plan that just builds on all of this for the teachers, really investing in our staff that way. Safe and healthy schools. Most of our schools are positive behavior intervention and support, which are called PBIS schools. So they work on all of this. Can you all see that so I don't have to read everything? No?
Just conceptually, it's a way to think about approaching discipline from a positive standpoint to support and incentivize positive behavior rather than just being punitive on behavior. So
right.
It's the concept for how to have student management.
Right, and some of that is grant funded, some of it is local funded as well. Clean and healthy electric air-to-air heat pumps, so investing in the buildings. We have the solar array out back, which provides actually discounts to the electric bills in all of the districts actually in the SU. And then counselor and home to school liaison, working with social emotional learning. Personalized learning, which is always something that the schools want to concentrate on. Farm to school, garden management. Yeah, we have a lot of things going on there. Outdoor garden and hydroponics garden, that's pretty cool. And then our laughter program also falls under that as well.
That's the after-school program.
Jamaica Village School, so we have, they're really focusing on their environmental education and the social emotional learning and field study opportunities right there, so that's great. Whoops, yep. And of course, you gotta love the kids again. So our Townsend Elementary Black Bears, so again, you're gonna see some themes through the whole process, right? Bridges Math, EL education that has a lot of hands-on learning, and personalized learning. Monshire Museum, STEM, and then my personal favorite.
This one's cool.
My personal favorite, the fifth grade is a fifth grade pair, right, is working with Greg Frost to design and budget for the Townsend Elementary School new playground. So that's fun, and I'm keeping a close eye on Greg. So we think that's going to be great. Again, the high quality staffing, PBIS, that's what we're investing in. The Cub Cave, which is staffed with 2 behavioral specialized paraprofessionals. So it's a safe place for kids. We've recently done the outdoor and lobby doors are equipped with badge entries now. New fire panel installed. So all of those investments in the building again. Home to school liaison, counselor positions. The old playground is coming out, new playground going in. So those are all things that the schools are, that you're investing in the schools.
I have a question. Back to Jamaica, what's going on in Jamaica? I mean, there's great lists of all the other schools and what's going on.
I think that it's, the theme runs through them all. They're all doing these things. This was just the presentation that I got from the administration.
So that was
Yeah.
Pictures of Townsend?
And then Leland and Gray, we're, small school, big opportunities, right? So still working with Vermont EMS Academy. There are students that are getting their EMR certificates, really putting them in a great spot for their future. One of the big things that we're in year 2 of project-based learning, that has been a huge success for the students. They just, every time we get a student report here at the board level, right, the students talk about that project-based learning.
And this slideshow is on the website as well. So this link goes to a Reformer article that was somewhat recently put out about the project-based learning at Leland and Gray.
So does the link give you examples of what they're doing?
Yeah, the article goes into a lot of detail about that. And this came out of COVID when we discovered that we knew that kids were so disengaged during COVID that we had to figure out specific ways to re-engage them.
Right.
And the hands-on learning piece was really the mechanism, so the school shifted that direction.
All right, another, this was new this year, it was a bike tech program. So you can see the kids all have stations here, they're learning to fix bicycles. Sort of turning it almost into a business, to be honest with you. They've been able to fix the bikes and then resell them. So really teaching entrepreneurial skills there. And then of course we have our Journey Away program that is studying food systems and cultures. And they are actually on the road right now.
In a train.
On a train. So they're visiting the Gulf states and Vietnam and France. So it's a 6-week trip. So they're on their way. Wishing them all best.
And that program operates like an academy where the kids are in that for the semester. And that's all they do this semester. They study us, they prepare for the trip, they go on the trip, they come back, they share their experiences out. So.
How's that funded?
How is that funded? So the seed money for this is really left over from the old Journey East program, which was our travel to China, which sort of met its end during COVID. And so we hired a new person to come in and sort of rebrand this and figure out how do we take the elements of Journey East, which were, again, project-based learning, hands-on, experiential type stuff, and travel, and collaboration skills and creativity skills, and take those things and repackage them as something different. And so we're still having this travel element. So this first, and the themes will change from every other year to every other year, but this one's food systems and cultures. So that will be a different one in a couple of years. But so the seed money came from that, but there's also a local budget contribution to that as well.
Yeah, it's $31,000 that has been consistently transferred over to the Journey Away Fund. Also fundraising. They do a lot of fundraising and donations. So.
On the bike tech, is it actually possible for them to start a business? Is that a possibility where, I mean, I know that, I don't even know if FBLA is still around, but, okay.
I was a member.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, it shows you how old I am. But, it's a great opportunity for the kids to learn about operating a business and what's involved, and
the concept here is two parts. One is the mechanical part of like putting your hands on and learning how to actually repair stuff, because that's a marketable skill, particularly in our region. But number two, it's that where you go from there. Now that you know how to do this, how can you create your own business? And this is year one, so we'll see how it grows.
Oh, okay.
But this is it's a part of Bike Tech is a nonprofit organization that puts bike repair shops in schools. We are the only public school in Vermont that has it, so it's kind of cool. And yeah, just year one, so we'll see. There's an intent that at some point it could expand into ski and board tuning and sharpening and that kind of stuff as well, which again for our region could be pretty helpful for the kids. But that's maybe a couple of years down the road. But you're absolutely right. We're preparing kids to do that. And Leland Gray also has a program called Co-op, which does put kids in local businesses to learn from them. And we've had students who have graduated with those experiences and opened their own businesses. So the possibilities are endless for sure.
Yeah, we actually had, in the business office, it was a couple of years ago now, we had a student from Co-op interning. So, because I believe in financial literacy to the 10th degree. Okay. So here, we talk about our investments. So this is broken down just a little bit differently to show you, how much of the budget is going to direct instruction. So these are just teachers, support services, counselors, nurses, all of that are really, seeing the students directly. The operation of buildings and food service, technology, transportation, which, these two top things account for 85% of the budget, right? So that's where your investment, the biggest piece of your investment is going to the students. 12% for administration, including the boards, 2% for debt service, so not a lot for debt, right? The board has done well to minimize the debt, and then 1% into capital projects. So who does the tax rate impact and how, right? So it impacts every single person sitting in this room, whether you get a property tax credit or whether you're paying full boat. Homeowners, renters, retirees, parents, guardians, grandparents, and others. And these are the towns that support that. How does it, the homestead property taxes are based on your house and 2 acres, and there is some income sensitivity that you receive a property tax credit if you're under a certain salary amount, or household income is what I should say. So I think that there's approximately between 63 and 70% of Vermonters receive a property tax credit. Okay, so the tax rate and the CLA history, because the CLA history tells a picture, tells a story that's important to understand the tax rate. So the year-over-year tax rate for each town is listed here. It's also listed in your booklet, so you can look at it there as well. This page is in there. The forecast for the December 1st letter from the commissioner was looking at tax rate increases of 18.5%. We've seen districts at 20+%. So while these tax rates are not great, I'll be honest with you, the percent increase is not as traumatic as it's been in some of the other districts. Dramatic is a better word.
Would you say that's a function of the new weighted pupil count?
And it could be a function of the weighted, yes, that's true. But then I want you to look at the CLAs, right? So I think in your booklet, I also broke out like what is the tax rate increase based on the expenses and what is it based on the CLA, right? So you can see in there that, you know, the bulk of this is because of the CLA dropping again, right? So you can see in Brookline, 2020, you're at 100%, and now 75, lost 25% in your CLA, which means your property assessments are higher.
I must have missed the explanation what the CLA is.
I'm sorry, yes, common level of appraisal, thank you. Caught me on that one. So you can see that that's, you know, what's causing a lot of these tax increases throughout the state of Vermont.
And this is one of the levers that the state uses to raise enough money from the tax pool to pay for the past budgets. And if your CLA is at 100, what that basically means is that your property listing values of the town are equal roughly to the market value of the houses. And so when your CLA drops, that means that the gap widens between those two things.
Right.
And so they have to basically jack up your rate to get the equivalent tax money out of your, I just lost my train, to get the equivalent amount of money out of what would be the actual, like, what they believe is your market value of your house. Right. In essence is what they're trying to figure out.
Question about that, because I mean, as I hear it, in a perfect world, the CLA just, if everybody's house value is going up, but the appraisals haven't been redone, the CLA just brings everybody up to where they should be. So in a perfect, and the appraisal value is just the distribution of the dollars that are going to be spent. So it theoretically, in a perfect world, has no impact on total taxes, right? It's just distribution between you and me.
Yeah, it's ensuring that is towns that have varying levels of appraisal that they're gathering, collecting, and distributing the right amount of taxes to serve.
So it conceptually has no impact on the total tax dollars spent.
Tax paid.
Tax
paid, right?
If my housing value goes up twofold and I haven't been reappraised, I'm going to have a low CLA, right?
Yes.
And
a higher tax rate.
But I mean, if everybody's house is going up in Vermont, then theoretically it has less impact. So it really isn't about raising taxes. It's about it's about distribution of the taxes the dollars that are being spent.
Paying what?
So everybody's taxes shouldn't be going up because of CLIA. Everybody in the state, it shouldn't, right? It'll be going up because we're spending more money.
Yeah, right. Overall, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
theoretically, the thing that Lori's described here that is a big part of the equation, is this Mike? I'm not sure. Is that my neighbor,
Yes.
Mike? Hi, Mike. And Bob alluded to it as well. It's this dramatic change in the way in which they weight students. Everything is a cost per student model, And so you can see on the page 23 there that we published 232 kids. Is that what it says? 232 kids?
On page what page?
On page 23. And that was prior to this Act 127.
No,
I know they restated you.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's equalized pupils
Yeah.
versus the long-term weighted
But
median.
my point is that
Yeah.
in the old, equation, they said, okay, take your 13 million divided by 232 kids. Now they're saying take your 14 million divided by 846 kids. So they really changed the metrics that Lori and Bob have described. But you're absolutely right. If spending was the same and offsetting revenues were the same, the raise in property value should have no effect on the actual dollar you disperse. But because they've dramatically changed the number of kids and we've lost revenues across the state because of the federal government pulling out of, in this area is probably 5 million or something like that you lost in revenues. That's what's driving these dramatic increases.
Does anybody have any questions on this before we move on to the next one? Okay. So there's two ways to pay your property taxes. We talked about this before. In 2023, the income limit was $128,000. So if your household income is that or more, you are paying basically full boat. And if you're below that, there is a whole calculation, which if you go, I don't know that that's, yeah. So it just links to where you can go to find information about the property tax, the ways you pay here. And then if you go to the next one. So, this is what I was referring to. So there's, if you want to sort of get an idea of your taxes, there's a property tax calculator that you have to know. It's very nuanced. You have to know your household income and your property value. And you can enter it actually all into this calculator, and it will tell you approximately how much your property tax credit will be against your property tax bill. Of course, these are all hypothetical numbers at this point because remember that yield that we talked about earlier has not been set by the legislature. So that is really what has to happen first, and then they'll set the property tax rate. So these are just estimates. So this just gives you an idea of what the property tax is for somebody who's paying the full amount on different house values here. And we know that New Vane was up 7.22% in their property taxes. So that just gives you an idea of, if your house value was this and you were above this for your household income, what you would be paying. So the next steps, unless anybody has any more questions, is to vote tomorrow. Yes, Frank.
Yeah, just kind of a general question, and thank you for your presentation. I think it's excellent, and also thank you to the board for the tremendous commitment you've made. I recognize a few folks that 10 years ago when I worked in the system are still here, so thank you, because I know it's a tremendous commitment. My question is around the long-term trends here that you've described and you put in the book around enrollment, and then you mentioned a long-term, this is probably a question for Bob or maybe Al, the long-term plan. You've got a group that's looking out, and glad to see it's a decade. So maybe just a little context in that, as you've described and as we've seen, the state is doubling down on a cost per student model. There's no indication since 1996 that they are like, let's fund programs in the state of Vermont, or let's go to the foundation formula that we used to be under. It's let's do the cost per student dance, because that is your tax rate, right? Spending divided by your kids is your tax rate as it compares to the yield. And this illustrates it really well, that nice graphic. Wish I had thought of that in my annual report. Page 21. Super.
That's right. He was
you know,
my mentor, everybody. So.
just a great, flow chart. So the context is, given the state wants to drive education funding, and therefore the constraints, right, our financial sort of limits on a cost per student, we got to recognize that when we have 7 grades, like we do in Townsend, and I think in Newbrook, right, pre-K, K, and then 1 through 6, 7 grades, once we get away from 15 kids per grade level, right, and Lori heard me talk about this, then we depart from this idea of a cost per student funding model that's viable, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's 15 kids in front of a classroom teacher is what they designed public education to be funded around in Vermont. So when we start having schools operating at less than 100 kids, and then you look at your trend line, it just says eventually it will break. It's just a matter of when. So, I know Jamaica, I think we have 14 kids in the school for how many grades? That, at some point that's just not viable from a financial point of view, and that we didn't come up with. The state is saying you shall calculate your tax burden based on cost per student. So my question is, at the elementary level, we have a lot more flexibility because the endorsement is broad for an elementary teacher, right? But in the high school, the endorsement is specific to a subject area. Science, math, you shall not, Bob, employ an English teacher to teach math. That's not allowed. So we can address the problem a lot easier at the elementary level than we can at the high school. So the question is, in my own town, I helped Brookline merge with Newbrook, and that was just before Scotty. I don't know if Scotty's here, but came in. But it was a great success. It was hard. A lot of folks didn't see it as viable, but here we are 10 years later, and literally it was within 3 months, the folks that said this is a bad idea said, okay, I'm going to give this a chance. And it's still standing. So my question is, how does that factor into the long-term plan? This idea of a cost per student system, and us contemplating operating schools of less than 100 kids.
Great
You
question.
go to the next slide. It doesn't have the information, but future planning was the next slide. So, which usually the board and talk about. So.
I mean, I think the board started looking in depth at this in 2018, right after the merger to the district, and I think there's been a lot of iterations. I created this is my first year as superintendent, so I created a one-page overview of what that has looked like since 2018. It was shocking even to me how many different iterations the board has looked at and discussed through different study committees and task forces, communities, conversations. I mean, at one point there was a 13 or 14 option thing that they discussed and whittled it down, and then there was a couple different models that were presented by the administration that were tossed out, and then a couple different other things, and they talked about whether to offer high school or not, or they talked about whether or not 3 buildings is sustainable. And I mean, I'm happy to say that we're further along in that conversation, but we have not resolved it yet. We actually have a long-term planning meeting this Friday, and we've been working most recently with Stevens & Associates to do feasibility studies with us. And so they're coming back with, I believe they call it a matrix, of taking different elements that we want to use as comparison points, and then looking at, if we did this, how does it score? If we did this, how does it score? How did this, how does it score? To try to see if we can visually come up to a proposal or a plan that makes the most sense based on the financial side of things, but not only that, the educational side of things as well, and what works better for kids. taking into account the recent stuff that the AOE has provided with us about the building conditions, the facility conditions reports, and all that, and just thinking about the big picture. So there's a lot of information being compiled, and the long-term planning committee it's been meeting, and we'll be at some point making recommendations to the full board, and then there'll be broader full board and community conversations, I think, at that point. So
Good to hear. Yeah, I know it's a really tough process, and
this budget is built on as is currently for next year as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. And I do encourage you to try to solve it in phases, because as you know, the elementary level, because of the flexibility in the endorsements, can be addressed, a lot easier than when you have to offer at the high school level. Science, math, the literacy, social studies, and then the humanities, the fields of knowledge that we need our citizens to be. And you've got a class of 30 divided by 6 grades, right? 5 kids per instructor. That's right around the corner with these numbers. So it's been a great tradition here in Leland and Gray and West River Valley, and if we can get ahead of this, or maybe change the cost per student mentality, so good to hear. Thank you for
And
the
just to
answer.
follow up, and I know Frank knows this, and we've talked about it, the board and I have talked about it, is we're on borrowed time for the, some sort of threshold or penalty of a cost per student coming back. And I think you remember that West River was in the penalty box before they put it on hiatus. So, that just adds to the tax rate. You're double taxed on that amount. So that is something that we talk about, that we're aware of, that we're sort of on borrowed time with that.
Maybe related to that, just to sort of define the magnitude. On your page 23, I think it says the equalized rate is $1.75. Is that what it says? Page 23. Our current, board equalized tax rate for the union is $1.75, right? And you were saying, hey, look at us, we're going down to $1.67, which is great. The problem with that, in the context of what you just said, I believe this year the state average is $1.31.
Right. Yes.
So we're $1.75 compared to these larger systems that can get 15 kids in a classroom, and that's a big margin. I didn't do the math in my head, but what is that, 40 cents on $1.30? That's 20-something%, right? So that's how far away the long-term planning committee is from what the state has envisioned as a viable public education system. 20%. Unfortunately, we know most of that is as your chart said, it's instruction and buildings, right? It's not administration and it's not bond. It's personnel and buildings. So.
Yeah, there's definitely an economy of scale that bigger districts have around that distribution. So it is tougher operating small schools in general, and in particular small high school. That conversation happened a year or so ago, and talking about what the benefits are for kids as well. So it's like there's that trade-off, and you got to figure out where the sweet spot is.
Yeah,
for sure. But it is a lot harder, and I think that's why the new model took into account the scarcity, because they recognize that economy of scale doesn't exist, and so they have to give us more kids to count to help balance that out. But it doesn't exactly fill in all the gaps.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for your comments, Ben. And that is it. Just more kids, because I like them.
Have more kids? Is that the suggestion? Have more kids?
Hey, that is the solution, actually.
Any other questions on Article 8? Anybody on the interwebs got a question? Let's see. Yeah, that's good.
That's making it smaller.
You need to stop your share.
Oh, you're right, that's what it is. Thank you, sir.
This isn't live, so it was a town meeting.
No, the recording will go out.
Okay. That's right.
Any other questions? Live or on the web on Article 8? Is somebody's hand up? I can't see. No? Okay. Okay, moving on. Thank you very much for that discussion. I thought that was very good. The presentation was excellent. Very informative. Moving on to Article 9. Article 9, to elect one at-large school director who is a resident of the district for a 3-year term. Sarah Webb has petitioned and will be on the ballot. It will be, yep. Sarah?
Hi.
Sarah?
Yes, I am running for my current seat is up for re-election, so I am running again.
Thank you very much for your time. Article 10, shall the voters of the West River Modified Union Education District authorize moving the operational surplus, if any, from fiscal year 2024 to operational reserve fund? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. It's Bonnie West of Jamaica. Do we have a balance in this fund? In this report, for both this fund and the next one, the capital fund, there's no beginning balance, no ending balance, nothing went in or out, and there's no explanation for that.
Sure, there is a just over $1 million in the operational reserve fund and roughly $300,000 in the capital fund. So this is a mechanism that's on the warning every year that just moves if there is any surplus. If there's not, then there's no movement into the operational reserve fund so that it's not just sitting in the general fund. So it can be used for other things.
When I was looking at your budget, it looks like for fiscal year '24, down at the bottom on the expenditures side of it, that you could have a surplus of 780,000 something?
That is what's projected at this point in time, well, when the budget was developed.
Oh.
So that fluctuates throughout the year, but that is what it was projected. And a lot of that is based on unfilled positions. There were at least 2 to 3 positions, counselor, I can't think of all of them at this point in time, but there was, I think, 3 positions that we have not been able to fill for staffing issues, so that's causing a surplus.
So what would happen then at the end of the year, say you had this much, or even 500,000, and you only move 100,000 to the, through the operational to the capital fund, what would that, the surplus, where would that, you put that?
So it would go into the operational reserve fund.
Would it reduce taxes?
At this point, the board did not decide to do that.
What's the target size for that type of reserve?
So there, I mean, I haven't ever read anything in the statute about a percentage that is recommended. I know other states look at 5% to 10% of your operational budget. So that has been the board's target right there. Revenues are not set until the final word, right? So there could be revenues added to bring down the tax rate at the last minute because you don't vote, you're not voting on revenues, right? You're only voting on the expenditures. So that would be a board decision to be made. Bonnie, did you have another question? I kind of feel like you did.
I had, well, in your expenditure budget, you have the thing, Board of Education, and it's like almost $700,000. What is that expenditure? What is?
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. So that expenditure is not these guys are not getting $700,000. So under that comes the SU assessment, for the SU costs as well. So that's combined with other board expenditures such as legal, audit, all of those regular yearly expenditures, plus the SU assessment.
I think it would be nice if you labeled it supervisory union assessment, and we'd know what it is. And that brings up another, well, I don't know if it's a question, but a request. I feel that in the report, we should have had a copy of the supervisory union budget and our percentage of that assessment, because this is the only report we get, and we have absolutely no idea what the supervisory union budget is.
In this particular, it hasn't been in there in the past, at least.
I was thinking years ago it used to be.
It
and
might
would
have been.
show our percentage.
Yeah, so if you go on the WCSU website, the WCSU budget and all of the assessment costs are on there.
Yeah.
That is public.
But it should be in this report, I think, also.
Okay.
And I also would like to see in this report, which it is a list of the names of our school directors. Because we don't necessarily know all of you.
Okay.
And it would be nice also to know what school directors are on the super board also that produces the superintendent's budget.
Great suggestions.
Huh?
Those are great suggestions. Yeah. Always looking for ways to improve.
Lori, and kind of following up on Bonnie's question, for Board of Education, on the assessment, does that include for services for special education, or is that in the direct instruction?
No, that's in the direct instruction, or there is a line, that is,
Oh, I see.
1201, it's MTSS, which is our special education and our academic support teachers.
That's why I think anything coming out of the supervisory union, you have your budget, that should be in here also. I would appreciate it anyway.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make a note for the next person.
I made notes.
You made
I'll
notes?
still be
Good.
here.
I saw Bob writing
One of us
first,
will
like-
still be here, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
For the next person that takes over.
Yes,
Okay.
Tyler Robinson from Jamaica. I just have a question of the board members that are here or that serve on the board. How many of you have ever visited Jamaica School? Recently? So when we put something up and it says, somebody asked in the back, what does Jamaica School offer? I'm just wondering how many of you know how much is there. So I think that has a lot to play into how you feel about schools. So, come visit.
And I will say this too, each principal does report out monthly to the board on what's happening in their buildings, as
Yes,
Jamaica
yes,
does
the
as well.
principal
Yeah.
is very, yeah.
Yeah.
And because in the past, myself and a number of people in Jamaica sat in a number of meetings to put forth what, I think Chrissy Haskin mentioned that, what we would like to see happen in Jamaica. And we went to numerous meetings, we offered, support around those things that we put forth. We didn't really feel like we only had a half-time principal at the time, somebody for 2 days a week and not always that, which didn't lend us the opportunity to pursue those things that we were asking about. So that sort of fell by the way. So I think that's just something to be aware of when you're talking about Jamaica and the school. So more action and on the part of, I'm not saying the board, but the administration, the total package of what Jamaica brought to the table. A lot of people put in a lot of time to, in fact, for one instance is that we offered a early pickup. People could drop their child off at Jamaica School if they had to go to work. Myself volunteered a number of years ago to do that. I had to be fingerprinted at my expense, and that just fell by the way because we didn't have administration to help us follow through with it. So there are certain little, that was a little thing, but it would have been a draw, I think, for people to say, oh, that's great, you know, I have to be working Brattleboro, but I can drop my kid off at 7:30 and, until the teachers took over the building, so that's just one example. So.
Any other discussion? Article 10? Hearing nobody online? Hearing no other discussion on Article 10, Article 11, which is led into Article 10. Shall the voters of West River Modified Union Education District transfer $1,000 of the operational reserve fund to the capital reserve fund? Oh, what did I say?
1,000.
No, there's extra zeros there. $100,000, sorry, $100,000. Any discussion on Article 11? No? Okay, hearing no other discussion on Article 11, is there any other discussion that would like to take place? At this point, it would be kind of non-binding business. Yes, sir?
Back to Article 11, just for a second.
Oh, yes, sir, absolutely.
Is there a specific target for this 100K from operational reserve to the capital reserve? Is there a need or a target for that money to go to, waiting for it to show up? In other words, have you already spent it in your mind? At this point, you just want permission to go ahead and do what you've already decided to do.
I would say there's yeah, go on.
Oh, yeah, and so it's part of the capital plan. There is, I don't have the figure for all the buildings in my head, but there is millions of dollars of deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed for the buildings. Again, that all plays into the long-term planning as well, right? So that those numbers of what is anticipated over the next 10 years for deferred maintenance for each building. So this is just to add to the capital to take care of some of those deferred maintenance items.
Hopefully it'll make up for some of the deferred.
Yeah, it's a small contribution, but it's so that it doesn't, we're not asking the taxpayers, we've already asked the taxpayers for the money, and it's sitting in the operational reserve. So, Bonnie, this kind of goes to your point as well. So, you know, instead of adding $100,000 to the budget, taking it out of that operational reserve and moving it over to capital to take care of some of these deferred maintenance items.
Is there a particular item in the operational reserve that's going to go lacking or going wanting?
No, not based on this.
Okay.
Other question?
Karen Amadon, Jamaica. Listening to Frank, and I appreciate all of his knowledge here, and understanding a little more about maybe why for the past 10 years there's been sort of this underhanded, well, I don't know if I should say underhanded, but this movement to close Jamaica School, sort of out of our control, not letting us have a pre-K license to grow, things like that. The laughter program, so many little things that just not showing on the presentation tonight about Jamaica and all that we have to offer. And I understand why 15 students, maybe that should be a thing.
And the state size, yeah.
But we have a vibrant community. We don't want to lose our school. And we're now getting our pre-K license back. And if we close, so now we have to go to Townsend, which is overcrowded, and so does that mean our kids get shipped down to Newfane, to Newbrook? Probably, because it doesn't seem like Newfane and Townsend parents like to be put out at all, but it's fine to have Jamaica be put out. Anyway, I just really would like to say that we would like to keep Jamaica School. We have a lot to offer. I guess that's it at the moment, till the next meeting. Oh, and the long-term planning committee meeting, is the public allowed to come to that? And you mentioned it's Friday, but when and where?
It's at 11:30 in the morning. It's here at Leland and Gray, a different room. And it will also be on Microsoft Teams because it's being played by Stevens Associates is managing the Zoom element for us. So, but the link is, it's all been warned. It's on the SU website under West River as well. So, yep.
I was gonna say, I could get it, link it, give it to her.
Yep, now it's on the warning.
So it is 11.
Yep, took care of that.
Is there ever any discussion about reimagination for some of the schools? I know you have PBL and things like that in the high school, but going to Carradon's point, I mean, you've got Jamaica State Park right there. You know, I'm kind of thinking about maybe the school becomes incorporated in some sort of programs that elementary students can become involved in, dealing with Jamaica State Park, dealing with nature, dealing with the outdoors, maybe even getting the state involved in terms of the park system, see what they have to offer for programs. I mean, it's a great place.
It's actually one of the models that was presented a couple of years ago was utilizing it as what they called an immersion center,
right?
Which is sort of a hands-on. You know, kids would do like little residencies there from the other.
Yeah, you could do. I mean, you could do PBL, you could do UDL. UDL would work really well.
Absolutely, yeah, that was one of the things that was presented at one point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great opportunity to kind of reimagine, rethink, and then provide opportunities for students that don't have them at the schools now, just because of the fact that it is right there, right at the park.
Yeah, Westminster West does a similar model with an arts residency in their building. Yeah.
Awesome.
You do have one online, Chrissy Haskins, with a hand up.
Chrissy?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Karen and Claire's comments. Jamaica School has been really put to the wayside for many, many years now in this district. I am a parent of a kindergartner in Jamaica Village School, and it is an amazing school. And I think that there's a lack of knowledge of what Jamaica has to offer. And we are, some of us in the community have been working on that recently with some flyers of what is unique about our school. Jamaica has so many unique opportunities at it that no other school in our district has. And, I hear the idea about an immersion center, but that still moves our kids, that still moves the Jamaica kids out of their school and sends them off to Townsend or Newbrook. And their bus rides get longer. It's inconvenience for the families. They're uprooted from the school and the community that they know, and they're shoved into another school with a lot more kids, a very different environment. And we are finally getting our pre-K back. I appreciate the board voting in favor of bringing that back. And I will add that is a help to Townsend, because giving us our pre-K back in Jamaica is helping to solve a capacity issue in Townsend. And so if people just understood a little bit more, and if the board members could come see what Jamaica has to offer, I think we could do a lot there and have a special programming there for an elementary school, not to move our kids out, but to offer something special there in that school with our access to the state park and our access to the environment and a walkable community. There are so many great things there. And I really urge you to keep Jamaica School open and support us moving forward, because it's certainly worth supporting. Thank you.
Okay, there's that planning meeting at 11:30 on Friday, right here at Leland and Gray, if you'd like to attend, and you can attend by teams as well. You can, that's the planning for the future. Any other business on the elections tomorrow to discuss? Hearing no other business to become before this meeting, Again, I'd like to thank the school board, the administrators, teachers and employees for all they do for our children. And don't forget to vote tomorrow, Wednesday, March 27th, at your respective polling places, beginning at 9 a.m. in Townsend, Brookline, Newfane, and Jamaica, and 10 a.m. in Wyndham, with all polling places closing at 7. I declare this meeting adjourned. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.